Welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast, a podcast for creatives. I'm your host, Tammy Takaishi. Join me for compelling conversations with artists, actors, authors, musicians, and other creatives about the impact of the creative and fine arts in their lives and our ever-changing world. Thank you for listening. Hello and welcome to Creative Piecemeal Podcast. This is Tammy Takaishi, and today I am with Carmine. He is the drummer of the band Cactus, and currently they have an album out which was released earlier this summer, June 7th on Cleopatra Records, called Temple of Blues, Influences and Friends. So I'm excited to have Carmine Appice on the show to chat about being a musician, chat about his journey and all things music, etc. So thank you for being here.
Okay, good to be here. Early in the morning.
Yes.
A lovely morning here. Where are you? I'm in Florida. It's a beautiful morning in Florida.
Oh, nice. I'm up in New York City.
Oh, I'll be there next week.
Oh, very cool.
We have an apartment in the Upper West. So we'll be going there for a few days, and then I go to Philadelphia after that to play with my other project, which is a show called Tonight's the Night, which is a Rod Stewart show. And I play all the songs that I was involved in with Rod, which is a lot of songs and a lot of hits and all that. And I got a guy that sings like Rod, looks like Rod, performs like Rod, and the whole show is basically a 1979 Rod Stewart kick-ass rock show.
Oh, nice.
So I'll be in New York from the 9th until the 12th, and then I go to Philly and do that, and then back to Florida after that. But this Cactus album that I did, it wasn't my idea to do it. It was the owner of Cleopatra Records, because Cactus has been around for a long time. It influenced a lot of bands like AC/DC, Van Halen, Ronnie James Dio, and many, many more. And so he said, well, I think we should do an album that shows the influences of Cactus to different musicians and different bands. I said, that would be great. So I said, well, let's call it Influences and Friends, because I have a lot of friends that would want to play on it. And in doing it, I found out that a lot of my friends were influenced by Cactus, which was really interesting. And when it was all done, you see my studio behind me here, but you can't see it. People can't see it. We can see it. Right? And there's those things on the wall that people don't get anymore, gold and platinum records, But I started it in this studio just with drums, which is very interesting, because usually you don't start albums with just drums. But anyway, so as we did it, we built it up. I noticed that friends of mine, Foghat, Robin Trower, and a few other people like that, were getting on the blues charts in Billboard magazine, which, Billboard's been around forever. And they were like number 1, number 3. So I told Brian, the owner of the label, I said, we should market this as a blues album because it's a rock, blues rock band. It's always been a blues rock band. So let's market it like that. He said, yeah, it's a great idea. Let's call it Temple of Blues. I said, wow, that's a great idea. We already had the album cover. I don't know if you saw the album cover. It has everybody that played on the album.
Yeah, it looks great.
Cover, it looks like Sgt. Pepper kind of vibe. That's what I wanted.
Oh, for sure.
And then when we changed it to Temple of Blues, then we changed the artwork to put everybody in a temple. And all the artwork on the CD and the LPs, all temple vibed. So it was great. And I started doing interviews at the end of May, like the one I'm doing now. I used to do 3 or 4 a day for a long time. And finally, all the press kicked in. We did a couple of videos. Did a song called Evil. That's from all the songs on the album were songs of Cactus from the 70s. We just redid them with all these different people. So like the song Evil came out. Dee Snider sang on that. Doug Pinnick from King's X, my original guitar player, Jim McCarty, with Cactus, and myself. And we did a great video with that. And then the next video was One Way or Another with Ted Nugent, also with Doug Pinnick singing and Doug Pinnick playing bass. Those videos came out, so they helped it also after about 3 weeks out, the album broke in on the Billboard charts at number 3 on the blues charts, which blew my mind. I thought it would break in maybe 25 and build it up, because it was in the pre-orders on Amazon. It was always in the top 5. It would go 15, then 4, then 5, then 3, then 4, then 5, 3. And I believe it's still on the Amazon blues chart somewhere. But, it blew me away. And that was the first time I was on the Billboard chart since 1989 with my group Blue Murder. That was the last time I was on the charts that way. So I'm very happy. This weird idea of the owner of Cleopatra turned into something really cool. So now it opens up the doors to do another Cactus Blues album, which we're already thinking about. Next week on the 7th, August 7th, we have a new song that was going to be on the album. It wasn't ready. You know who Melanie is?
I don't.
Melanie was, look her up. She was a 70s artist that had a lot of big pop hits. It was like a kind of wimpy stuff, but Cleopatra, she passed away in January. So Cleopatra has the rights to a name for AI. So they had a version of her singing Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix, right? So they said, do you think we could, while we were doing the Cactus record, you think we could add this, and put Cactus behind her? So it'd be like Cactus with Melanie, or Melanie with Cactus, any way we want to call it. So I said, yeah, we can do that. And so they gave us the vocal. And first thing I did was put together an arrangement in my head with the drums with her vocal. And then we brought in the bass player, Cactus, Tony Franklin, and we brought in Artie Dillon, our guitar player. And we built this amazing track with her. And I gave it to my engineer, the same guy that mixed my whole Cactus album. That sounds so great. And that's coming out August 7th. So we're thinking we'll do the next album. Maybe Cactus Plays the Blues or Cactus something. And we'll put that first song, that'll be the first song on the next album. So, and then there's a couple other ones we want to do like that. And then we're going to do some of the other songs that we missed on the Cactus records. And then we're going to do over some really cool blues songs from the old guys, So now we have an idea of what to do for the next album. So we're going to wait for this album to run its legs, as they say. Mm-hmm. And then we'll start doing another, probably come out next year.
Yeah. And that's so great. Like I love blues, and it's such a versatile genre, and people put their heart and soul in every genre, but this one I feel like is a little bit different, Yeah.
Well, this album, it's a great album. People love this album, and they love the fact that it's the old Cactus music redone. But the great thing about it, when you play blues, usually you're in a room, you're all playing blues together. This album, not one person was in a room with the other person on every song.
Oh, wow.
So this song started, as I said, in my studio with just the drums, which is really hard, because you take a song like Parchment Farm, which is very fast. You heard the song, right? Mm-hmm. It's like boom, bam, jiggy, 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 like that,
Yeah.
So I did it. I sat down at the drum, put on the machine, put a click on, the same tempo as the original track, which was very fast. And then I heard the click, and I said, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm listening in my head. No, and a parchment. I'm singing it to myself, and I'm playing it. I thought that was cool. But then if I wanted to fix something, there was nothing on the tape but drums. So I didn't know where it was in the song, unless I heard certain breaks. So I did that to 2 songs. I did that for One Way or Another and Parchment Farm. I said, it's got to be a better way. So what I did was then I ran the click, and just as I'm singing it to you, like I did Evil, you heard, the song Evil from the album. So I went 1, 2, 3, 4, bam, bam, drums, chicka, chicka, bam, lay down, lay down, lay down, lay down, down, bam, bam, drums, digga, 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 lay down, and verse, and down there, a long way from home. I did the whole song like that. So it's like a vocal map with the click of the song. So now I had something to play to. Instead of it being in my head, it was on the machine. And then I play it and I go, I don't like that chorus. I'm going to redo the chorus. And I knew where the chorus was because I was singing it. So I did the rest of the 12 songs like that. And then we give it to my singer, Jim Chapley, who's a guitar player, vocalist, harmonica player, and he would put whatever is needed on his part on there as a demo, give it to the bass player. He did the same. So now I got a demo of the whole song. And then I would start calling my friends. Ted Nugent, you want to play in this count? Yeah, man. What song you want to do? One way or another. Okay. I'm going to put Doug Pinnick on vocals and bass, and I'll give it to you. Okay. Put him on bass and vocals and send it to Ted. He did the guitar. Send it back to me with 3 different guitars. Send it to my engineer, Pat Regan. He would combine the guitars, make them sound cool. Send it to me, see if I like it. If I like it, then we mix it. That's how every track went. It took a year, because I was dealing with people's schedules and when they were home, they were on the road, this one, that one. Most people had their own studios, but Warren Haynes, the government mule that did the blues, No Need to Worry, I started with the drums there. I gave it to the bass player from Government Mule who knew how he played and played with me, putting the dynamics of what he thought he would do, Warren would do. And we gave it to Warren. And interesting about his performance, where he did the vocal and the guitar at the same time. Most guys would just sing a vocal and then they do guitar, but he did it at the same time, which gives it that live vibe. And when it came out fantastic. So that's the whole story. So help me God.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you've been feeling burned out, stressed, overwhelmed, or exhausted, the resources and courses at the Self-Care Institute are here to support you. The Self-Care Institute was founded by Dr. Ami Kunimura and provides support for individuals and organizations with burnout prevention, burnout recovery, and stress management. I've personally taken a few of these courses and found them to be super helpful, both professionally and personally. The care you give yourself matters just as much as the care you give to others. But if self-care is difficult for you, you're not alone. And the Self-Care Institute is here to support your well-being, resilience, and sense of fulfillment at work and at home. For more information, visit selfcareinstitute.com or go to the show notes and click on the link.
I think it's wonderful about technology nowadays that it does allow people to be able to be creative and to work on projects and to not have to stop doing things for just to physically be in the same space. But there is something to be said about, like you said, playing in the same space as other musicians. It does give a different vibe, a different feel, but at least you get something done. At least you get to have your creation realized,
And recording, the feel comes from the drums. If you would put another drummer on this whole record, it would feel totally different. Mm-hmm. So as long as you got a good solid, no matter who it is, a good solid drum track, that people can play to, that, you have to learn to play with a click so it doesn't go like, you got to be able to go up the flow with it like this. So you're going in and out of the click, very little bit, just enough to feel humane, not automatic, like robotic. So if you go in and out a little bit and you can play a little behind the click, and then maybe you need a little more energy, you go on it and maybe a little ahead of it, and then you pull it back. But just enough so it doesn't drag or speed up. It's a hard thing to explain. Like when I do it, that's what I do. But when I listen to it back without the click, it sounds right. Mm-hmm. So that comes from years of using the click. I've been doing click stuff since 1982, probably before you were born.
Yep. It's interesting because I come from like a classical music background. So, I'm used to like a metronome, but, it's completely different.
Have you ever heard Vanilla Fudge?
I have, the name sounds familiar.
You should listen to Vanilla Fudge music. It's classic, symphonic, classic rock, psychedelic symphonic classic. We even did on a second album called Fleur de Lis and Moonlight Sonata as one track.
Oh, cool.
You should look that up.
I will definitely.
Vanilla Fudge, Moonlight Sonata. Interesting. And all our intros. There's one called Some Velvet Morning. It goes starts boom, boom, dun, 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 you know, dun, do 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 boom, then it goes explodes, you know, bam bam, really symphonic stuff. You'd like it if you're into symphonic stuff.
Yeah, I would definitely love to check it out. You've been in a variety of groups and drummed for so many, people who are just as iconic as you are, Jeff Beck and Pink Floyd. I love Jeff Beck. What was it like working with him?
Well, working with Jeff at the time that I worked with him, he wasn't a big icon yet. He was as big as we were. That's why when we were with him, it was Jeff Beck, Bogart, and Appice. It wasn't Jeff Beck group with us as a little. It was all equal bill. And we just released a Beck, Bogart, and Appice live in London Rainbow with 7 new songs. And I sang most of them. And we did live in Japan. It's a big box set, four LPs and a big book. And I think it has 4 CDs as well if you have the CD version. And that album is on fire. I mean, Jeff Beck, before he started the instrumental stuff, I was involved in that at the very beginning with his Blow by Blow. But before that, it was Beck, Bogart, and Appice, and that was like the bridge to the instrumental stuff. And we had something called Jizz Whiz, which started out in 13/8 and went to 3/4, then went to 6/8. It was all instrumental. So that was like the bridge from BBA to the Blow by Blow stuff. And then he just from Blow by Blow it got really big. And I was kind of pissed off that I didn't end up on there because I worked on it. I worked with George Martin, but we couldn't get a deal together with Epic Records, my manager and Epic Records and Jeff's manager, and so we couldn't do it. So I was left off, but I worked on it, so I knew what was going on with it. When it came out and did 2 million copies, I was really pissed off. I said, man, I should have been on that record. But then in hindsight, when I look at it, if I would have been on that record, would have been playing with Jeff, I never would have joined Rod Stewart. Which Rod Stewart for my career exploded my career. I co-wrote Do You Think I'm Sexy and Young Turks, huge records, which really helped my songwriting credits and all those records. So that's what they are back there, all those golden platinum records, 5 million, 10 million, But Jeff was, as far as I'm concerned, of all the guitar players, he was the best. He kept progressing. I mean, like a month before he died, you look at some of the stuff he played live, it was tremendous. It's tremendous. I mean, I played with him. We did a Coca-Cola commercial way back in 1968 before he was really big. He did it with Vanilla Fudge. We paid him $300. So it was either BBA with Mark Stein from Vanilla Fudge keyboards or Vanilla Fudge with Jeff Beck. So either way, but it was awesome. That's what turned us on to Jeff. And so we know him for a long, long time. And the day that we gave Jeff and his manager the booklet had 10,000 words for the box set. We gave that to his manager for him and Jeff to look at. And okay, why are they not calling us back? 2 days later, we found out he died. So it was terrible. So we were working on that live BBA box set. So it ends up Tim Bogart died 2 years ago. So now I'm the only one left. So I had to finish all of it. And I had to listen to the whole record and make sure the mastering was good and report back to the engineers and the technical stuff. And it was sad, it was really sad. It really hit me. And I didn't know how because he was, they're friends since 1968, Even though I didn't talk to him every day, but we've been through a lot of stuff together because we played together and we go to England, I go to his house. He come to LA, he'd come to my house. We did People Get Ready together,
Yeah. I
okay. On that downer note, let's.
No, I appreciate you sharing those stories because that's the kind of thing that people carry with them as artists. Experiences with other musicians, experiences in their lives, and it bleeds into the music that you create to this day.
I wrote it all down, and a few years ago, I released my solo autobiography called "Stick It: My Life of Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll," and it has all these great stories from '60s to Ozzy getting fired from Sharon, Ted Nugent and BBA and Pink Floyd and Paul Stanley and Kiss, and just my trip all the way through from in the old days, we used to tour with Hendrix. We used to hang out with Hendrix. I knew Hendrix before he was Jimi Hendrix. It's a historical rock book, but there's a bit of the crazy sex stuff that went on in there. When I told my writer, "You sure you want to keep the stuff in there?" He goes, "Oh yeah, man, the women love this stuff." I said, "Okay." It's especially middle-aged women, not you yet, but it's a great book. I've had so many. I mean, if you look at Amazon, it's like lots of 5-star reviews.
Yeah. It must have been fun being able to write about your life up to a certain point.
It was interesting. I had a great writer. This guy was a guy that wrote, I don't know if you know, Nikki Sixx had a book called The Heroin Diaries.
It sounds familiar, yeah.
It was all about his trip and heroin and all that. So originally when I got the deal for the book, it was on VH1 Books, and then VH1 Books went out of business, but I had a good deal when they gave me the writer. Again, it took a year to write. These things don't happen overnight. He came to Brooklyn where I grew up. I had that place in New York. He stayed with us. And we drove all over Brooklyn to all of my old haunts. And then when I went to England, I stayed with, I worked with him for 5 days, interviews and talking and fine tuning. And then over the phone, on Facebook, FaceTime, it took a while. But I remember when I first read what we use as the first chapter, which is Playing with Ozzy and Getting Fired by Sharon. I knew the story, but I was reading it and it sucked me in because his writing was so good, He's really a great writer. So, it did okay. I didn't do what I wanted to do because VH1 Books went out of business. They were signed with a major book company like Simon & Schuster or one of those. When they went out of business, we had to go out and find another deal. I said, oh man, this could take another year. So we just found another company. It wasn't a big one. They were like a big indie. So we sold thousands and thousands of books, but I wanted to be like on the New York Times bestseller list. Never did that. But, they say anything over 500 books of a book, you're successful. So we did like 11,000, 12,000 books. So, I'm happy. I still sell them at my gigs. There are some people that don't have it, actually.
I'll put a link in the show notes so that people can access it and purchase it.
Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can get it also on my CarmineMerch.com. It's my own company.
So sort of getting back to the beginning, I was wondering, how did you get into drums and what made you decide that you wanted to stick with music for your life? Well,
my cousin was a drummer, Italian family. Every time I went over there, I got on his drums, I played. And then I just kept doing it. So eventually my parents bought me, because my birthday's in December 15th, and at Christmas 10 days later. So I would get a bigger present, So one year they got me a really cheap $55 drum set that we bought in Brooklyn at the very, very first Sam Ash store, right? And then I played that. And then with that, I actually started learning to play, reasonably. And I started doing gigs. And all through my teens, I did gigs. I made enough money to buy a really proper drum set. And then by the time I was 17, I was playing enough gigs where I bought a brand new Chevy Super Sport 327 4-speed, monster little car. And I bought it brand new. I put the down payment and I made the payments. And then I just kept doing it. I went to high school. I tried to do an electrical installation for a year. I didn't like it. And I went back to regular high school and I majored in music. I learned how to play keyboard a little bit and theory, using theory harmony. And I've always sang in the streets of Brooklyn, like doo-wop. So with that, you learn how to build chords, what chords are and all that. So between all that, I started playing and playing and playing. And I used to play clubs opposite Jimi Hendrix when he was called Jimmy James. And we used to smoke pot together. And he used to say he wants to make it. And for me, I said, I don't care about making it. I just want to do what my drum teacher did, make a good living, have a nice little house in Brooklyn, have a soundproof drum room downstairs, have a Cadillac. To me, that was successful. But he was on to making it, records and all that. So, and then I kept playing and playing, and I ran into these guys that said they had a band called the Pigeons. They had a manager, and they wanted to try and make it. And there was a scene going on in Long Island, and that scene was like this production number thing, they called it. And in that scene was my group, the Pigeons, which turned into Vanilla Fudge. There was a group called the Vagrants, which had Leslie West in it. another group called the Hassles that had Billy Joel in it. So that scene blossomed into a whole new Long Island, New York kind of scene. But we were the first ones in La Fudge to make it at that scene. So it all started with my cousin Joey's drums. And then on my father's side of the family, we had my cousin Joey, then me, my cousin Anthony, my cousin Frankie, my cousin Tommy, my brother Vinny, right? And my son plays too, but he's not serious. So there's 7 drummers on my father's side of the family. My cousin Frankie almost made it a couple of times. He was going to replace Richie, the drummer from Little Feat. They said, yeah, you're in. Then Richie came back and he was out. And there was another situation like that. But he was really good. He was like the third guy. There was me, my cousin Joey, me, and then my cousin Frankie. He was the third one. And then my brother made it. He was like number 5, 6.
That's really cool that there's so many drummers in your family and there's such a passion for that. Like, I love drums, but my parents are like, drums are too loud. Here's a violin.
You play violin?
I do, yeah.
Well, here's some, with my Rod show, right? I also do a thing called Carmine Appice Diaries, which is like a rock history storytelling kind of show. I've done a bunch of them. I'm doing one again in December down here. And what it is I have a picture of a book flying through the clouds, collecting pictures of my career. And then it falls, it opens up, and you see the pictures. And then it shows you like a notebook, and stories get written into it, And then it comes full screen, and there's all like 20 stories, like Jimi Hendrix and Prince, and that Wise Prince in My Bed, and John Lennon lasagna story, and blah blah blah. So it all comes up, and then I come out, and I do this thing. I get people clapping, and I play like, just with the sticks. And then after that, I go, okay, here's the stories. You guys pick a story. And I get the audience to pick the stories. But behind that is the symphony music with my drums. And the symphony was written by my friend's son, who's 16 years old at the time. And he won all these contests in Florida. Like, he'd write the best symphony piece. He'd hear it in his head, write it, put it in the computer, and the computer plays it, right? Really, kid's a genius, So he won all of Florida. Then he won with another guy, all of America, right? So now in January 9th in LA, we're doing a gig with the Rod Show with a 60-piece orchestra. And this kid is writing all the charts.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right? And we had him come on last year with a quartet and did Rod Stewart's version of You Keep Me Hanging On, which is my Vanilla Fudge song that Rod did with me in the first album, Footloose and Fancy Free. In the middle part is a full orchestra. So this kid wrote a quartet emulating the orchestra, and they played it at our first show in Boca Raton, and it was awesome. And then 3 weeks ago, his sister that plays violin and piano, they go to his performing arts school down here. Very uppity school, but really, really good performer, good musicians. So this little girl, 14 years old, named Ariana, came up, and some of the Rod Stewart songs have violin in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tonight's Tonight. I'm sorry, Tonight's Tonight. I think You're in My Heart. I'm sorry, and a couple other ones. So she came up and she played with us 2 shows. First show she was nervous as hell. Second show, more at ease. She's beautiful, 14 years old, and she came up and played violin with us. So this family is unbelievably talented. My father's a drummer. I was his idol. We became friends. And but what a family. So right now, I heard the first performance and piece that he wrote for Young Turks, the song Young Turks. So he wrote it out for the orchestra, had the computer play it, and really sounds amazing, It's amazing how he does it. He just writes it. I don't know if you can do this. He gets some music notation, and he starts writing notes. Violins, cellos, bass, timpani, and he just writes it. All the music notes. I mean, I know, how to do that. I wrote my book, Realistic Rock, which has become the biggest selling rock drum book in history. And then I followed that by doing clinics. I was the first one to do that. But, I wrote the book. There was only 3 notes: hi-hat, snare drum, and bass drum. And I could write that stuff, hear it in my head and write. But man, he's writing for a 60-piece orchestra, timpani and cymbals and bass drums. And when I heard that, I said, wow, this sounds great. So when he comes back with the family, they're out doing, he's in some camp up in New Hampshire, and his sister's in a dance camp in New York. And then the family's going on a little trip. They come back August 15th. So we're going to start getting together and really finalizing these arrangements. There's a couple of little bits here and there that we need to fix. But this kid is so talented, and it's amazing. He's got to write 17 songs like that.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
What is something that you are really proud of about this latest album?
Well, I'm just proud that one of the things I was proud of, that some people who I thought were friends were influenced by Cactus, like Steve Stevens, who played with Billy Idol forever. He's a friend. I called him, said, yeah, I'd love for you to do this. I don't know if you know Cactus. He said, no, Cactus, I'm from Brooklyn. He said, I grew up on Cactus. I love Cactus. So I said, wow. So I was proud of the fact that a lot of people who I thought were friends were actually influenced by Cactus. And the fact that I was really proud of the fact that we did it, that we did it. And it was such a feat of production, and the fact that I'm the producer and my co-producer, Pat, engineer, that we actually did this and put it together from scratch, put it all together, everything from the cover to the music, getting everybody on it. And then it comes out and it breaks in number 3 on Billboard. I was just proud of the whole thing.
It's wonderful. And I'm sure it must be nice to just have had a chance, even though it was virtual and distance, to still work with your friends in that way,
Yeah, I mean, it was, some of it was a pain in the neck, because people were out touring and doing this and doing that. It ended up being okay. It took a while, but it ended up being okay. So now with this thing coming out now August 7th, the Cactus and Melanie Purple Haze, it's already track number 1 for the next album. It's going to take a while to do that one too. So I'm actually thinking of starting. I'm already starting to think about songs for that one. And the hardest part sometimes is picking the songs. Mm-hmm. But considering we don't have to rewrite songs, I got 3 or 4 songs on the 3 or 4 Cactus albums that I'm going to use. And then like we did on this first Cactus album. And maybe we'll just call it Temple of Blues 2, make it easy. Like a Led Zeppelin 1, Led Zeppelin 2.
Yep.
And just move in the direction of starting to do it.
You mentioned how a lot of people were influenced by Cactus, but I mean, who influenced you growing up?
Me? Mm-hmm. My influences were not rock. They were Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich, Joe Morello, Max Roach. These are like jazz guys. Mm. But what I took from them and infiltrated in what I did rock with power, which was different. And they played real light, and I played with like that, with the whole body into it, But there was also some drumming things. Like there's a guy named Cozy Cole that had a song called Topsy Part 2. And there's also Sandy Nelson that had Teen Beat, which were drum singles. All of those were drum singles that were hit singles back in the 60s. And that influenced me I always wanted to be the Gene Krupa of rock, where he was a great drummer. He brought the drums out front, where people were influenced by the drums. And my mother used to tell me how they would go to the Brooklyn Paramount and then they'd see Gene Krupa play and they're all dancing in the aisles and stuff. So that left an impression on me. Then I saw the movie, The Gene Krupa Story, which had it all. It left a big impression on me to want to be like him. But now we had a different musical area. The area was rock instead of big band jazz. So I did that. And I did it to a point. The only thing I never got was the hit single. But I did do, different bands where I had the drums up front. It was all about the drums. I did, with my brother, we did drum wars. I did clinics for thousands of people at a time where I did the drums up front. And, And I would do disappearing drum solos and just crazy stuff, And so I did kind of achieved what I wanted to achieve. The only thing I never achieved was having that one drum single as a hit, But I had solo albums, and I did stuff with my Guitar Zeus record. I don't know if you ever heard of those. You should Google that. Guitar Zeus record had 37 tracks and some of the greatest guitar players on the planet. I had everybody but Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, and Eric Clapton. I had Brian May, I had Richie Sambora, I had Yngwie Malmsteen, Mick Mars, Slash, just everybody on that record. It was done in the mid-90s, and it's still going. It's still going. There was a box set released, and I sold hundreds of thousands of records of that around the world under my name. We did videos. It was awesome. That was just a crazy idea that I had. I was with this guy. We had a band, and a guy from Night Ranger called Jeff Watson comes out of Night Ranger and immediately gets a record deal. I said, man, because you're a guitar player. I said, maybe I should do a guitar album. I'll call it Guitar Gods. No, I'll call it Guitar Zeus. It's real more powerful. I was kidding. I went to bed that night. I said, this is a good idea. So then I could do press. I could do guitar magazines, drum magazines, and that's a pretty good idea. It took me 2 years to find a manager that can get a deal. But he did out of Japan. But in that 2-year period, I ran into like Brian May, and Brian said, yeah, I'd play on it. Ted Nugent, yeah, I'd play on it. The guys from King's X, I'd play on it. Mick Mars, yeah, I'd play on it, And then when I started doing it, I got all those guys to play on it. And once they played on it, it drew in more people to want to play on it. And before I did a Guitar Zeus 1 and 2, I did Guitar Zeus Japan, Guitar Zeus Korea. It was wild. It really built. We got some big record deals and publishing deals. And here I am, a drummer doing a guitar record, So I did a lot of crazy stuff in my career.
It sounds like it was a fun time.
It was time. That's why the owner of Cleopatra said, can you do this? I said, can I do it? I did Guitar Zeus. Of course I can do this. So we did that. We did this. And it's good. I did instrumental records. I've done produced people. I've done everything.
So a couple more questions before I let you go. But one is, what do you wish you had known when you first started on your career?
I wish I would have known not to do the second Vanilla Fudge album, because it was a concept album that had nothing to do with music. The only piece of music on it was that Fleur de Lis Moonlight Sonata. That's the only music on it. The rest of it's all BS. It's about like music through the world and through wars and everything. Music goes through it. If you listen, you got Sieg Heil, Black Power, and right speaker and left crowd singing that. Just stupid. You do something like that on like the 10th album after you're big, not your second album. Everyone that we did, we were Cream and Hendrix and all those albums, The Who, everybody from that era, they all did the first album. Went big. I did the same stuff on the second album. I went bigger, not us. That ruined our career. So that's one thing. That's the main thing, really. I wish I would have known. We were listening to Ahmet Ertegun, who owned Atlantic Records, and Shadow Morton, our producer. They thought this was going to be the end, the biggest thing in music. A big flop.
One last question is, what is your favorite part about creativity?
Seeing the end result, moving in a direction, knowing there's an end result, and then achieving that end result. Like this record, the Cactus record, And he told me, he said, can you do it? Yeah, okay. And we started doing it. The first day I started Parchment Farm in my studio to the end result and completed album and number 3 on Billboard charts. And that's really the feeling of, you accomplished it, even if it didn't hit the charts, just seeing the album and the LP in its form, knowing that you started with just my drums, seeing it finished with all the pictures and the cover and everything done in the package, that's the end result. You go, that's it.
Wonderful. Anything else that you would like to say to our audience before we sign off?
Well, anyone listening that's been listening to me, I say thank you for all your support. And without the audience, I couldn't do anything. So cheers to everybody for the last 50 years. I know your audience is probably not that old, but if there are a few old guys listening, my audience starts in 1967. So I don't even, I stopped counting how long it is.
Excellent. Well, Carmine, thank you for being on the show. Listeners, please check out the new album from Cactus, Temple of Blues, Influences and Friends. It rocks. It was out on Cleopatra Records June 7th. You can pick it up now and check the show notes for links to how to get that, as well as Carmine's book, Stick It. So definitely make sure to check that out. And as always, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to Creative Piecemeal. We hope today's episode left you feeling inspired. This podcast is independently created and produced by the host, Tammy Takaishi. More details about today's guest can be found in the show notes, along with links to the podcast's socials, merch store, and ways to support arts organizations AHA Broadway and New Normal Rep, both near and dear to Tammy's heart. Don't forget to visit creativepiecemeal.com, the official podcast website, where you can leave fan mail, write a review, explore Tammy's blog, and discover the growing collection of episodes. Special thanks to our audio engineer, Alex Repetti. Additional narration by Dante Jace. Let's keep celebrating creativity in all its forms.